Unless you've been living under a rack for the last 10, 20, 30 years, well, you're probably aware of Masters of the Universe. He-Man, right? Castle Grayskull, Teela, Orko, Skeletor? Okay, well, at least He-Man. He-Man was hugely popular in the 1980s. In fact, his entire concept was so 80s, with a man literally built out of muscles. He had a cartoon show. He got a movie starring Dolph Lundgren, arguably one of the big muscle superstars in moviedom of the 80s. Hey, even got a singing and dancing ice skating show? Okay, the less said about that, the better. If you're not familiar with He-Man, the basic concept is he has a power sword. He calls upon it to funnel the power of Grayskull. Think of it as the power of the universe, ultimate power, and it channels him into this godlike hero. His original form is lazy Prince Adam, and if that seems like a motif that's been done before, it has. The idea of a hero that can transform and get super strength is as old as mythology. But He-Man as a brand has a problem with power, specifically the problem with how He-Man gets his power and what he can do with it. It does create a problem with storytelling. So let me explain. Obviously, for a brand to thrive as a toy line, it has to be aspirational for kids. Kids have to want to be the character. That's what helps them relate emotionally and get invested. Now, whether you're doing this voluntarily or, let's say, your parents who played with the brand as kids are forcing you into it, hey, it's still an experience and it's still something that you have to eventually fall in love with yourself. Parents can't just force you to love something, right? In fact, every generation wants their own brand. Now, the concept of going from Form A to Form B, from the weakling to the strong version, and this is what He-Man does, letting the power return or let him become, it's basically Captain Marvel. And no, I'm not talking about, Carol Danvers. I'm talking about the Fawcett Captain Marvel, the one from the 40s, where a kid, Billy Batson, screaming out Shazam, strike of lightning, and suddenly he's a huge muscular guy. It actually is very similar to He-Man because, well, it's also a skinny kid, except in Filmation, who lightning transforms him into a big guy. And the thing is, for kids, the world is a big guy. The world is huge. So having big muscles, big powers, helps you feel in control of this. And when you look at a brand like Masters of the Universe, and the two sides of the coin being He-Man versus Skeletor, right? You've got your, like Superman versus Lex Luthor, you've got your archenemies. Well, much like Superman and Lex Luthor, Skeletor is not as strong as the hero trying to beat him. And that's one of the problems. Now, the Lex Luthor Superman issue, that's a whole other thing because Lex Luthor has his sort of public persona that helps give him strength. Skeletor, not so much. He and He-Man are not exactly going out on boating dates. They're more clashing all the time with swords and sorcery. But Skeletor's not a match for He-Man. He-Man is more powerful. He-Man is way more powerful than Skeletor. And without the sort of Lex Luthor public face that he has to put Superman in his place, the only times that Skeletor can beat Prince Adam / He-Man is to either have him revert to his weaker form, to get a huge army in order to combat him, but that's still the whole idea of larger democracy army rules, and then finally getting more power and becoming godlike. And he's had to do this over and over again throughout the franchise, because, as I said, the fundamental issue is that Skeletor is not as powerful as He-Man. In fact, he's way weaker. And unless he gets godlike powers, he can't beat him in hand-to-hand combat. And that is an issue. Having a villain that is stronger than the hero is fundamental to children being able to relate to a property. Because children fundamentally see themselves as the hero that has to take on the giant, big, bad world. So having a character in fiction that represents this world that is an obstacle to children helps them to relate. Now, sometimes this is used to establish a villain long-term, like when Thanos gave Hulk a whooping in the, third Avengers movie, or when Bane broke Batman's back. That established the fact that, oh, you have a big new villain, that if he can beat the Hulk, if he can break Batman's back. This is one of my favorite examples. Notice how Darth Vader is only fighting Luke with one hand. That's huge, because he's stronger than Luke. He's more powerful than Luke. He's threatening, and that's what makes Luke aspirational. Because Darth Vader basically beat him into, two shades of, knocking him off. Now, sometimes this can be done for humor. Again, like when Hulk gave Loki a giant beating, or of course... But those humor moments are not as important as the underdog concept, meaning a child wants to see themselves as the hero that's going to accomplish great things. And the only way to accomplish great things is to be able to overcome a challenge. And He-Man fundamentally doesn't have that issue, because he has the power. I mean, heck, a simple Google search of what are He-Man's powers, and you can see he's pretty invulnerable and incredibly strong. All things kids want, but if you look at his archenemy, he's basically a sorcerer who uses magic as his main weapon, I suppose. So He-Man and Skeletor aren't exactly evenly matched. It wasn't always like this. No. Back in the olden days, back when the brand was created, He-Man was basically just a barbarian that came out of the jungle. He had a force field that was emitted from his power harness, but that was about it. Otherwise, he and Skeletor were pretty evenly matched. And the idea wasn't to use his sword to transform. In fact, the sword was just a key. It was a key to get into the castle. That's why He-Man came with half of the key, and Skeletor came with half of the key. And then the idea was that if you had both sides of the key, you could combine them together. This would give you access to the castle, and then whoever runs the castle wins. I explained all of this in a video I did quite a while ago about the original way Motu was meant to be played, but yeah, it was basically capture the flag. Whoever got the two halves of the sword, got the key let you into the castle, and now you own the flag, and you'd flip it around to show your side or Skeletor's side, or just, run away with it. Whatever it was capture the flag with a castle and a sword. Now, thanks to the Filmation line and other storytelling, the flag hasn't even become part of the storytelling at all. In fact, it's really only included as a nod to the original castle, not a most important accessory of the entire line, the way it was designed to be. So yeah, you'll still see the flag included with Castle Grayskull sets, but it basically gets overlooked and isn't seen as the key that brings the entire storytelling together. So while He-Man is bigger than other toys, and that was a huge selling point, that has also become the reason he has not been such a hit generation to generation. There's been a relaunch of the brand about every 20 years, in 2001, in 2019, but heading kids into the brand a second time in a second generation has proven to be an issue, and a big part of that is He-Man's invulnerability. Getting into a hero that doesn't have a challenge, that has no issue beating the bad guy, well, that creates a barrier against kids seeing the hero as aspirational. One way to fix this is just to make Skeletor more powerful, or perhaps He-Man less powerful. But at this point in his history, and with so much canon behind him, it's a little hard to make an about-face at this point. So, yes, you want your hero to eventually beat the bad guy, but He-Man can do it pretty simply. It's not that hard. Super easy. Barely an inconvenience. So maybe they'll wind up being, best friends after all, and they could have stories where they team up to do things together, like Big Hordak. Hordak is actually a very powerful villain. So powerful that he forced She-Ra and the rebels to flee into the woods. They're much more like Underdog. They are on the underside of the storytelling, trying to take back their planet, which is why She-Ra is actually more aspirational than He-Man. I know, it's crazy. Let me know what you think. Give me your thoughts in the comments below. Please do share this video with others. It's the best way to show support for this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.